So, Be'ezer Hashem, we're going to continue talking about the Kuzari, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Kuzari's understanding and explanation of Eretz Yisrael. So, Maimer Aleph Tzaddik He. Amar Chaver, the Chaver is speaking to the Melech, the Chaver is speaking to the king and saying like this. Let me explain to you the Gadlus Ha'am, the greatness of the people. This is when a person already has received his entire soul, and then he has the seichel, his intelligence, on the tachlis of the level, the highest level they can achieve. And then he achieves the koyach halaki, the inyan halaki, the idea of the divine, that it's even higher than the levels of intelligence. And then he talks about therefore it talks about Avram Avinu. Avram skulas eva v'talmidim v'akei nikir ivi. Lefi shu yoyesh aklamim hamuzogim asher etzlusam v'chavlasam eretz Yisrael eretz hanavim. Therefore Avram Avinu inherits this land, the land of Eretz Yisrael, the holy land of Eretz Yisrael, because he's yoyesh. He inquires. He has Yerusha, this climate, which is the perfect muzzle, the perfect middle climate, perfect harmonious climate. Asher Yusam, which is the middle part of the universe, so to speak. V'chemdasam Eretz Yisrael Eretz Hanavim. And its desire is the land of Israel, the land of prophecy. And Kulam, therefore, the people were ready to receive prophecy in this appropriate land. So mainly what he's saying, at least what he starts to say here in this mimer, is that Eretz Yisrael is the climate is the middle climate, the muzzle, the climate of the middle, the Emtsoi. And because it has this middle climate, this possibility, therefore it's also the Eretz HaNevuah. You have to understand a little, what does it mean that it's the middle? What does the middle mean? So there's also a medrash in Yalkut Chodesh V'Eschanan, that the Medrash explains that there's actually 7 different climates, 7 different climates in the world, corresponding to the 7 continents. And Eretz Yisrael represents the middle climate. And the middle represents not just accidentally the middle, but it represents the climate that has the perfect harmony between all the different various climates. And it has the Tzoy means state of unity between all of them. And therefore, the inyan halaki, the idea of the divine, which is the higher level than seichel that the Kuzari explains, this idea is chol inyan halaki on this rest, this idea of halaki, specifically in the place of, in the inyan halaki, in the place of the divine space of Eretz Yisrael. In Maimer Beis Tes, he starts to explain a little bit, the Chaver starts to explain a little bit more what this idea is. And this is what he says. Amar Kuzari, first the Kuzari says, Amar Kuzari, the idea of the nation of Klal Yisrael you already explained to me. The idea of the land is a little bit difficult for me to understand. He wants to understand what is the Maila, what is the special quality of Eretz Yisrael. Amar Chaver. So the Chaver tells him, the wise one, the sage, tells him like this. It's not unusual to say that a particular land has a very specific type of quality to the land. You see, for example, you see that there's certain places in the planet, on the earth, that gives rise to certain types of vegetation, and certain gives rise to other types of vegetation. And then there's different types of metals that come from the ground. There's certain places in the world that have, let's say, gold or copper, whatever it has in the ground, and there's certain parts of the world that don't have. There are certain types of animals, that are found in populated areas in certain parts of the world that can live in a warmer climate or a colder climate, and specifically they flourish specifically in a very hot climate or specifically in a very cold climate. And you see that there are animals that are indigenous to different places of the earth. And it's interesting the way he phrases this. He starts first talking about the world of vegetation, and then the world of the inanimate, copper and gold and other minerals that exist in the earth. And then he talks about the Balchai, which is the form of life of the animal kingdom. Now, before he's mentioned the Doimim, Sameach, Chayim, Medaber, and Navi, he explained the Doimim is the inanimate, which is the lowest level, and then the vegetation. And then from the vegetation, it goes into the animal kingdom, then into the human kingdom. Over here, he gives the example, starts off with the vegetation. And the Kol Yehuda, Yehuda Moscato, one of the early Achronim, has a pirush on the Kuzari. He explains simply because he says, Atoroyim and Koimes, he says, you see, copper and gold and all the minerals that exist, or the gases that exist within the ground, in the earth, is not something that's observable to the naked eye. So he says, you see, there's certain plants and certain vegetation, certain fruits and vegetables that grow in a particular area in this world. This is what you see, you observe. So you see the tzmachim is something that's observable, very clear, that there's an eretz mikadelas, there's a land that gives birth, that gives rise to particular types of vegetation. There's also, if you look a little deeper into the earth, you'll see that there's different types of minerals that are indigenous to certain parts of the earth. And the same also with the Balchai, with the animal kingdom. So he's explaining, and he says, this is what you see in all the world, all of creation. So therefore he says, according to the mezeg, according to the atmosphere, according to the climate of the place, will give rise to that particular type of idea. So there's a type of understanding that there's eretz mikadelas, so the land gives birth to a certain possibility. Omar Kuzari, so the Kuzari responds, but I don't see that that the people that live in Eretz Yisrael necessarily have a higher quality than Yisrael Shar B'nei Adam. We don't see that. Amar Achav, this is what the Kuzari is done. This is just like when he gives an example of a Karen. He gives an example of a field, a vineyard. If a person wouldn't plant a vineyard and would not work the land appropriately, wouldn't create grapes. Now there's certain wild grapes that grow, but if a person wants to have a proper vineyard, then you have to properly plant the grapes that you want, and you have to properly upkeep and making certain that the grapes grow in a proper way. But so the same thing goes like this. So first he gives an example of a vineyard, which is this is what also Chazal have this example. The Chazal say Geffen Mitzrayim to see. The pasuk says in Tzilon Perek that there's an idea of Geffen, that Klal Yisrael is mentioned in Geffen, and there's actually a mind from there that's on this on why particular Geffen. And he says that just like Kfana, just like the grapes, in order for grapes to properly grow, it's not just you have the soil, and therefore the soil will give rise to these grapes. But if you want proper grapes, and grapes produce a fine wine, you need the ground, and then you need to plant in the seeds of the grapes, and then you need to work the grapes. So there's the ground itself, then there's the seeds that you plant into the ground, and then there's so this is like this. The main significance of this tchuna, this special quality, belongs to the people. Asher hu askul v'alev, because the people, the nation of Israel, Klal Yisrael, is the skula, the am segula, and is the leiv kolarim. Like we mentioned in the previous sharing, the idea of Klal Yisrael represents the lev. And then, in addition to the land, in addition to the people, so the people are the ikar, that's the karen, that's the vineyard, that's the grapes. But in order for the grapes to grow, you need the proper ground, and you need proper toil. So the ground itself is Eretz Yisrael. What is the toil? Well, the toil is ma'asim hamitzvos hakruchim. So therefore, this is what he says. The ultimate objective is to create proper grapes, have a proper karen to produce the proper grapes. But in order to produce the proper grapes, you need the proper soil and the proper work in the soil. So he gives that's the nimshal. The chuna is la'am. These are the people. And then, in addition, the earth gives help to the person to articulate this koyach hanavui, this potential of prophecy, or the high level of living. With the Maisa mitzvahs that is connected to the soil, to the land of Israel, the special mitzvahs that are connected to Eretz Yisrael specifically. It's like the work that is done in a keren, in a vineyard. But this grapes, this keren cannot grow in any other place. Same like regular grapes cannot grow in any place, any general place, but it has to have a specific place where it grows from. This is what he's saying about the milos of Eretz Yisrael. That idea, this the quality of the skul hazois, which is the inyan laki that Klal Yisrael has, cannot be revealed only in that place, and that's not only Bizman Shebeis Hamikdash Hayakayim, and there were mitzvahs that are kruchim that were certainly that are not applicable anymore today. And it's not only a time of Geula where Eretz Yisrael was bitifarta, but even Bizman HaGolus, even in times of exile and redemption is not yet here. Even Bizman HaGolus, there's a reason that Eretz Yisrael has a special quality. Says Le'ezer, that it could be a help for a person to develop spiritually. At the end of the book of the Sefer HaKuzari, where the king finally goes through the whole process of Geras, and he accepts Torah mitzvahs, and he's living this way, and the entire community is living this way, his whole kingdom is living this way. He asks the Chaver to become his personal advisor to help him navigate and rule the country. But the Chaver says no, he's ready, he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael. So the Chaver says, the Kuzari says, the Kuzari, the king tells him, what is it that you're looking for in Eretz Yisrael today, Hayom, in Eretz Yisrael, in the time of exile? The Shekhinah is no longer present. Not the Shekhinah, and the Shekhinah is Zazam, but the Shekhinah level, the revealed level of the Shekhinah is not present. And therefore, and therefore, to get closer to Hashem is possible in any place, so long as a person has desire, strong. Why would you put yourself into danger to travel to Eretz Yisrael in those days? To travel from Spain to Eretz Yisrael was to go through a lot of danger, to go through great deserts and the sea and the conflicting nations which were fighting over Eretz Yisrael during that time, during the first Crusades. So he's telling him, why would you do that if the Shekhinah is nederes? Amar Chana, what is the Chaver telling? The truth is that the Shekhinah, the revealed presence of the Shekhinah, of Hashem's Shekhinah, that there's a place of Makom Hamikdash, there was Asara, Nisim, Nasa, Aviseinu, there was many miracles, and miracles were so prevalent and so manifest and so in so many ways that it wasn't even recorded. That's the time of the Shekhinah when in the Beis Hamikdash. So that level of the Shekhinah, the presence of the divine presence, is no longer Nadara. Because this idea of the Shekhinah, the sense of transcendence, is only revealed to the Navi. And this is up to that in the time when all of Klal Yisrael will be together, when there is Kabbas Nechi Yisrael with the coming of Mashiach. This is what we say in the pasuk. This is a time that we're longing for, waiting for, to become close. And we say in our davening, Hashem should return to us. Aval, he said this. However, the inner Shekhinah, the Zohar is talking about the Shekhinah, so a lower level of Shekhinah. There's many different levels of Shekhinah. In Shekhinah, there's a big machlekes of Rishonim. Sadiq on the Rambam, and many of the Rishonim talk about if the Shekhinah is a kavan nivra or a kavan boira, if it's something divine, is it a nivra or is it part of the boira? And the Rechaim HaKadosh writes that they're both correct, both Rishonim, both Shittas and Rishonim are correct because there's many different levels of the Shekhinah, like the Zohar explains. So the Shechina Hanesteres Haruchnius, the lower level of the Shechina, which is the Steres Haruchnius, Harein Ish Yisrael Neman Tomer B'Masim Torah Levo Zachar Kavanah Yisrael. This Shechina is with the Ish Yisrael Neman, the truthful person, Tomer B'Masim, who is a Tomim with Masav, through his actions with mitzvahs, Torah Levo, and his heart is pure with Zachar Kavanah L'Lekei Yisrael, and his Kavanah is to be connected to the L'Lekei Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael is Muchedes, particularly to Yechel Yisrael. V'hamaisim lo yishlimu eloba. And therefore the Maisa mitzvahs lo yishlimu eloba, we can't do all the mitzvahs. V'harba mitzvahs Yisrael nechsaru v'misha eina dor b'Eretz Yisrael. That therefore there's a lot of mitzvahs, practical mitzvahs we can do, and we cannot do in Chutz La'aretz, we can only do in Eretz Yisrael. But here he says even more. V'kavana le'tizach, v'halev lo yitar, ki'im m'koyim Hashem aminim she'em yichodim la'Hashem. Afilu is at b'diminu mashal, kavachayim k'sheis amis. The kavana le'tizach, v'halev lo yitar, the heart will not become purified, the mind will not become clear, only in the place that is the place that's yichodim la'Hashem. Yeah. Therefore he goes. Therefore he goes to Eretz Yisrael. And he's in the Vakesh. And he goes to Eretz Yisrael. So you see that the idea of Eretz Yisrael, what the Sefer Kuzari is writing, what the Chaver is writing, is that not only is it a place for where the Gula Mitzvah Shleima will be, and that's the Shleimus Eretz Yisrael, Shleimus Am, Shleimus Aretz will be in Eretz Yisrael, but even Bizman HaGolus, that the Torah Levov, that the person, the purity of the heart and the clarity of the mind only comes specifically in Eretz Yisrael. Why specifically in Eretz Yisrael? Because like you said in the beginning, in Ma'amar Aleph, because it's La'ezer, that's the place that's La'ezer. That's the place that helps a person develop this idea. Yeah. It helps the person develop. Sorry, my base, we said back. But Tchuna Michad is a Shani La'am. V'achar Kesh La'aretz is Ezer on Ma'aseh HaMitzvos HaKruchim Ba. Tchuna Rishon is the but only specifically in that place, the environment, the actual physical climate, the spiritual climate, the metaphysical climate. Yes, Eretz Megadelos, there's a land that is Megadelos. Giborim is a place that nurtures strong people. There's certain people that are weak people. There's certain people that the climate brings out a certain type of culture and a certain type of way of being. And the same thing is also in Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael is Shemichodim L'Lekei Yisrael. That this is the Eretz Yisrael is called the Nachas Hashem. The pasuk in Shmuel Aleph of Vavites, Rashi explains it's Nachas Yisrael, but it's Nachas Hashem. It's Nachas Hashem. It's the place where Hashem's prayer. It's the place that is mukhsher to draw out the quality of Klal Yisrael. So not only for nevuah, not only for prophecy, and not only for the higher madrigas of the Shechina that was Nadaras, but even for lower levels to bring the Zachas HaTorah Levav. That the potential of a person, the spiritual potential of a Yid, is brought out after in Eretz Yisrael. So, just like we explained before about the Lev and the Garim, that in the Nefesh of Bnei Adam, the people, in the Tzura of Bnei Adam, where Olam Cotton is Adam, and this idea of the structure of all the Bnei Adam, like the Medrash brings down in Bereishis Rabbah, talks about the idea of that all the nefashos, everyone is connected to the different Evorim of Adam HaRishon. This is Koydem HaChet, L'achar HaChet. Arizal talks about this, that there's Adam B'lial, Adam D'Kedusha, but in the Tzur Rishon, in the first Tzur, that all connected, all Bnei Adam are connected to the entirety. Adam HaRishon is Chavar, the Ein Kol Chai, the source of all people, and the mashal that he brought is that it's the lev, that is the heart, it's the center point. The same thing also with makom, the same thing also with space. Just like it's true with nefesh, the same thing also with space. That the space of Eretz Yisrael is the emtsoyos. is the center point. And that's why when Yehuda Levi writes in the Shir that Libi Mizrach, that even though my body is the Meyer, Libi, my heart belongs there, because it's a Makam HaLev, the Lev of Klal Yisrael, the level of Ish Yehudi, is in the place of the Lev Olam. That's the place that connects the Lev to the Lev in the level of consciousness, the heart on the level of consciousness, and the heart on the level of space. So just like we say, and just like he wrote that, about he talks about the Bechir's Am Yisrael. Klal Yisrael was Nifchar. He says that it was Mipnei. Why was it the Bechir in Klal Yisrael? We'll talk soon about the Bechirs, but why was the Bechir in Klal Yisrael? Because they already had the Inyan Eliki, and they had the Inyan Eliki, like we said, from Rav Yitzchak Yaakov, Yerushalayim. It's the idea of Yerusha. It's an inheritance from generation past to next generation. It became Inyan Nachas HaKlal of Klal Yisrael. So there was something inherent in the nefesh of a Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Davka through Yaakov. The same thing also, if you erect that, is also with the Inyan Eliki, or the idea of the Lev and the Garin of the Olam, and the Kuda of the Olam, the center point of the world, had already something inherently. Something Inyan Eliki already inherently. It was already an Achas Hashem. And that's the Lashon of the Medrash. The Medrash says that Chum Parshas Reichas. Chaviv Eretz Yisrael Shabacha Bar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chaviv Eretz Yisrael. That there was Chaviv Eretz Yisrael. Yeah. That Eretz Yisrael, there was a Bechir in Eretz Yisrael. And the Bechira was just like the Bechir in Klal. So there's a Bechir in Eretz Yisrael. Or the Lashon is Achal Nifcha Eretz Yisrael in Mechilta. So the Kaviyachol, the Eibusher, on one level, there was, it wasn't that it was Shavak. We're going to talk a little bit about what this idea of Bechir is. But it had already a quality. Eretz Yisrael was called already before the Bechir. Achal Nifcha, already before the Bechir, it was called Eretz Zamchal Dvash, Eretz Verchava, the Torah tells us. So it means that it had already a quality. In other words, just like the Yechidim had a quality, that Hevel had a quality, and Sheis had a quality, and Noach had a quality, and then Avram, then Yisrael, Yaakov, then the quality of Yechidim went from Yechidim, from individuals, became Nachas HaKlal. And then there was a Bechira through Yaakov, through Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, the Pasuk Zumasim after Yaakov, like we learned in the Gemara in Shabbos Kufna Vav. The same thing also is connected with the Bechir in Eretz Yisrael, that the Bechir in Eretz Yisrael is connected with something already that it had some type of inherent quality. It was Eretz Chava, it was Eretz Toiva V'Rechava, it was already a good land, a prosperous land, even before there was a Bechir. So this movement from Nachlas HaPrat, that it belonged, Inyan Eliki was for a specific, and then it became part of the Klal, is, like we said, goes from Avram, is Yatzim and Yishmael, Yitzchak is Yatzim and Esau, and Yaakov specifically and becomes the Nachas of the entire Klal. And it's a Yerushalayim Navi similar Lashon of Tanya, because it goes from one generation to 3 generations, and 3 generations is the Chazaka, and it's like Nifsak, so therefore that becomes part of the Nachas HaKlal. And that's why we find after by Yaakov, the connection between Yaakov and Makim. So there's Adam, then we say, the Gemara says, but Mitzvah, that Shufra the Yaakov came Shufra the Adam. That there was a Klal of Bnei Adam, Koid Machet, which is Adam Rishon. Then because of the Chet, everything was diminished. The Inyan Eliki became specifically to Ish Pratim. And then from the Ish Pratim, after Avram Yitzchak Yaakov became Nachas HaKlal of Klal Yisrael. So this is what happens, that Yaakov becomes now like the Me'ain of Adam Rishon, who becomes the connection between Eretz Yisrael and Klal Yisrael, and Dafka to Makim. This is what the Rebbe writes in Tanya Geras HaKodesh. V'hinei shufre de Yaakov ein shufre de Adam Rishon. Shehu tikkun. Yaakov was metakim of Adam Rishon. Nishmas therefore nishmase gamkin klulim mekol neshama shabi Yisrael ma'olam ad olam. Therefore, all neshamas of Yisrael are kolul in Yaakov Avinu. In other words, just like Adam Rishon Koydem Achet, all nefashos of all bnei Adam are kolul Adam Rishon. Some were connected to the lev, and some were connected to the roish, and some were connected to the yadayim or adlayim, like the Medrash says. But then there was a chet, and it became dafka prati. It became very specific, and it became only for one individual person, the other individual person. And then when Yaakov came along, what happened with Yaakov? When Yaakov came along, it became a nachas haklal again. Who was the klal? The klal was bnei Yisrael, all the children of Yaakov. So therefore, nishmasei klulim ekol nishmas Yisrael. Therefore, his neshama is called all nishmas Yisrael. What do we find by Yaakov? We find by Yaakov that the idea of vayifka b'makom. He encounters the place. What is this place? What is this place? He counts hamakom, the place. This is an encounter of space, and this is the idea of tefillah. And we know that Yaakov was mispal tefillah's arvis. And his tefillah's arvis, we know that it comes from this passage by Yifka Paga Lashon Tefillah. The idea of Yifka comes the idea of prayer, of tefillah. So Amokim, the Kuzari writes in Maimer Beis Yud Beis, Vayifka b'Amokim Ritzoloimer b'Amokim Hamiyuchad. That the Mokim is the Mokim Hamiyuchad. This is really what the Medrash says. That Vayifka b'Amokim, what's that place? It's the Mokim HaMikdash. And Rashi brings it down. So when it says that the sun comes down, Yival Shemesh, and then Vayifka b'Amokim, and he counts with the essence good of all place. What's the Mokim HaMikdash? The Mokim HaMikdash is man who's just called Eilam Kulim. The Mokim HaMikdash is the place Shemimenu who's just called Eilam Kulim, like the Gemara says in Yuma. That means that's the essence of space. Now, Yaakov is Gematria 186, 182. With the four letters, 186. The Gematria of Mokim is 186. So Yaakov is the same Gematria as Mokim. Mokim 186 is also connected to Shem Havaya. The Shem Havaya, Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Shem HaMeforish. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Yud is 10, so 10 times 10. 5 times 5 is Hey is 5. 6 times 6 and 5 times Hey is 186. 100, 25, 25, and 36. It's 186. So Vayifka b'Amokim, what does it mean Vayifka b'Amokim? You count the place. That Dafke Yaakov, because Yaakov was the shoresh of Kol Yisrael, it's because at that point it became the shlemus of all Klal Yisrael in the Yachid, in the person of Yaakov, and he becomes the shoresh of Kol Yisrael. Therefore, Yaakov encountered the essence of space. What's the essence of space? The essence of space is the place of the Beis HaMikdash, is the Makom HaMikdash. Where do you count the essence of space? In the essence of time. In other words, let's go back to the Lashon of the Kuzari. The Tachlis is the Adam. The Ikar is the Adam, is the person, is the consciousness. When a person encounters space, space on itself doesn't, it exists, but the quality of the space and the quality of time occurs when there's an interaction between consciousness, space, and time. When there's a subjective experience in time and space takes on a new dimension. Space means something, and time means something. So Shem Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hoya V'yeh, past, present, and future, which is infinity. So that's the essence of all time. The Yud of the Hoya, the ever eternal present, which is right here, right now. That's the Hoya, that's the present. Where is that space? That's Hamakim, is the space, is the essence of space. Who encounters the essence of space? Yaakov, which is 186. Because Yaakov, who's the essence of consciousness, who's the Nekuda, he's the Antsoy, the lave of Klal Yisrael. In other words, all of Klal Yisrael is the lave Kol Olam. But Lefi Erech, because Yaakov is the Shoirish, like the Alter Rebbe writes in Geras HaKodesh, which means that it's Mushash, all Neshamas Yisrael is Mushash in Yaakov. So he represents the lev itself. He represents the of nefesh itself encounters the essence of space. That's what Chazal tell us. That when he goes to sleep, Kibbutz HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kol Eretz Yisrael Tachas Rosh. all of Eretz Yisrael becomes under Yaakov. What does it mean that all of Eretz Yisrael, that the Nekuda of Kol Eretz Yisrael was under Yaakov? So, L'chura, according to the Shittas HaKuzari, we'll say that Eretz Yisrael, just like the Tchuna, that's like the Klal Yisrael has Tchunas already, that are ready before the Bechira. The same thing also, Eretz Yisrael has a Chefza Shel Kedusha, has a certain quality to Eretz Yisrael, and therefore, even the Rambam brings down, which is more than Ksuvas, the Rambam brings down interesting Haggadahs about Eretz Yisrael, about kissing the land, that maybe you have to be a chacham to understand the quality of Eretz Yisrael. Not every person should go kiss the earth, but the chacham understood to kiss the earth. That there's something about Eretz Yisrael, weird Eretz Yisrael, machkim, that Eretz Yisrael has a special inherent quality in the chefts of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, it's not just in the gavra, in the person who's in Eretz Yisrael has new chiyuvim when they're in Eretz Yisrael, new responsibilities, new mitzvahs when they're in Eretz Yisrael. And that's the Kedusha. The Kedusha entails the person himself who's doing the mitzvah. The Asar Kedusha is Eretz Yisrael, like the Mishnah mentions. The Asar Kedusha is in the erech of the person doing the mitzvah. How much the person has to do the mitzvah, in what particular way does he have to do the mitzvah. But it's in the Chefza itself. The Chefza itself, Eretz Yisrael, has Kedusha. So l'chor, this is the Asa Kuzari. But the Kuzari would say that the Eretz Yisrael has inherent Kedusha in it, even before the Bechir. I'm not going to sound why is it Bechir, but even before the Bechir. And that means this is what the Ramban, Shittas Ramban, besides if there's a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, B'zman Hazar or not, that's another machlokes Rishonim. But the Ramban in Parshas Vayikra, Ches Chafei writes. He speaks about the Milas Eretz Yisrael, and he speaks about that Ein Hashem Lekecha Bo Mereshis Hashana V'Achris Hashana, that the race of them, that Ein Hashem Lekecha means the Hashgacha, that the Hashgacha Eretz Yisrael is B'li Tzayim, B'li Sarim, that there's no intermediary, that the Hashgacha of Eretz Yisrael, Hashem's providence and observation, connection to Eretz Yisrael is constant, without any intermediary. And therefore Hashem in the Pasuk is actually called a Lekei Aretz. Malachim Beis, Zayin, Chavav Chazayin, Zayin, Chavav Chazayin. Specific qualities already that are inherent in the land. Not just the Chiv and the Gavra, but the quality itself of the land. What is the quality itself of the land? What the Kuzari basically explained already before is that, like we mentioned just before, that the Kuzari says, the Maral Kiyua, which follows in the Shittas HaKuzari very strongly, there are Chaim Perek Chavishi, Amresh Ben Hey, further on, the Maral says like this: Kinikra Shmo Yizbarach Al Aretz, Shu Lekei Aretz. And this says in the pasuk, V'zar Achar Lekei Aretz. The pasuk says in Dvarim on Aleph, Pirush Ramban, and then he brings on the Ramban that Alekim Shu Necha Ba'aretz Kishem. Mentioned before, the Rambam quotes the whole sugi and ksuvas about Eretz Yisrael, the Mahalas Eretz Yisrael. If someone wants to go and bring a marriage, one person wants, one person doesn't want. You have to follow the other person to go to Eretz Yisrael. And like Rashi brings in Lech Lecha, L'seis Lecha Eretz Liyas L'chol L'Alekim, that Hadar B'Eretz Yisrael Ein Lo Ani Lo L'Leka. That Hadar B'Eretz Yisrael, someone lives in Eretz Yisrael, Hashem says, I'm to him, Hashem, Lekei Aretz. Or the Lashon Chazal, the Gemara says. But the idea of Eretz Yisrael is specifically the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu connects Ein Hashem Lekech L'Meishis Hashanah. There's a specific hashgacha in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is also called Artzis Achayim, the lands of life. Why is it called lands? It's Eretz, it's one land. But the truth is that Eretz Yisrael is really the Eretz Yisrael that we have today, meaning not the Eivin al Yarden that we had always, is the Eretz Yisrael of Shiva Amam. That's really its Eser Amamim, but the 3 Amamim, the Gimel Rishonos, which is connected to Chabad, is Eivin al Yarden. That's the idea of Seichel. That's the idea of intelligence, to be guided by intelligence. But we, unfortunately, do function more from a place of of emotions, Shiva Midas. That's why Bereshit Bara Elokim B'Sheshes Yamim, that Hashem created the world with the Midas, that the world that we know it is more a place of Midas. So it's Sheva Amim. It's a land of 7 nations. Like we said before, that the land, from the Yalkut, it said that the land has 7 climates and seven nations. What is Arts Sacha in the land? It means it's the Nakuda. It's like the idea of the 7th. It's the Shabbos of the 6 days of the week. It's the 7th climate of the older Shefa, the Mocker of older Shefa, like the Maral of Verse Hashem, Eric Samatal explains. And the Gemara talks about this in Tainus, when he talks about the idea of rain, and where rain comes from. That everything goes to Eretz Yisrael, that's the Nakuda, and from there it flows outwards. And Eretz Yisrael is the middle point, is the 7th climate, like the Shabbos of time. It's the Shabbos of space, like Yaakov Avinu is a Mufchash Ba'avos. Like the idea of in the Nefesh is the Lev, and from that place, just like the heart distributes the blood throughout the entire body. The same thing also, the Chayes Aleki that comes down from this world, the Makim, the Shayers, the root of that place is in Eretz Yisrael. And from Eretz Yisrael, the Chayes Aleki that comes down from this world, the Makim, the Shayers, the root of that place is in Eretz Yisrael. And from Eretz Yisrael, whatever happens in Eretz Yisrael affects the entire world. And also vice versa. Whatever happens in the entire world will affect Eretz Yisrael. It's like the heart. Like the muscle of the Kuzari they brought with the heart is the heart distributes all the blood throughout the entire body, so it's the most vital organ in the body, or certainly one of the most vital organs in the body. On the other hand, the heart can be in a weakened condition, and God forbid a person can have a heart attack, or there can be blockage to the heart because the flow of life force is not moving in the correct manner. And this is what Eretz Yisrael is. Arts is a chaim. It's the kuda of the artzis, a chaim. It's the source of life of all the artzis. The 7 specifically connected to Eretz Yisrael, and then it becomes, when it multiplies, it becomes the 70 nations of the world. So the 7 becomes the 70. But it's the Nakuda of the 7th within these 6. This is what Eretz Yisrael is, according to Shis that there's something inherent in the Chavtzer. So this understanding of Eretz Yisrael, that it's the Nakuda, the Garin, the Lev, the Arts Chaim, the middle point, and it has already some type of quality of view of Eretz Yisrael is already even before there was Bechir in Eretz Yisrael, seems to be perhaps, even though this is we're going to understand it's not this way, but it seems to be what the Rambam is writing in Hilchos Beis Bechira. When the Rambam writes in Hilchos Beis Bechira about the Makom HaMizbeach, the Makom HaMizbeach, according to the Rambam, Shittas HaRambam, which is unlike the Shittas HaRamban, but the Shittas HaRamban is the Ikar HaMikdash, Ikar HaMishkan, Ikar HaMikdash, Mishkan, Ikar HaMikdash, Mikdash, Ikar Mishkan, Ikar Mikdash, like the Gemara says in the Erevin, that the Ikar HaMishkan HaMikdash is the idea of the Aron, the Me'adat Shama, the place of revelation, the Aron, the Makom HaMishkan Ba'ali Aron. That's according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, the mitzvah say lasses based on Hashem, muchal liyas mekim b'kavanas. Muchal liyas b'kavanas, that's the ikar. The ikar idea of the Beis Hamikdash is a place for kavanas. Then Halacha Beis he writes like this, very good. And Hilchos Beis Bechira, which is also interesting to understand, why it's called Beis Bechira, not Beis Hamikdash. Beis Kedusha, Beis Hamikdash would represent Kedusha. Beis Bechira means Hashem is Baruch. Beis Hamikdash is like it has Kedusha in it. HaMizbeach Mekoymei Mechuvim B'Yosef. The place of the Mizbeach. Remember, the Mizbeach is the Ikar Hamikdash, because Mochim Muchal Haku B'Kabbalas. That's the Ikar, the idea of Beis Hamikdash, is that it should have a base. It should have a Mizbeach. So he said HaMizbeach Mekoymei Mechuvim B'Yosef. The Mekoymei, the space of the Beis Hamikdash. Remember, HaMokim, the space, the essence of space, the Nakuda of space. HaMakim Mechuvim B'Yosef, it's very important, the place, because Mechuvim B'Yosef, it's exactly the way it should be. The Ein Meshanim Oisem Mekoymoi Le'olam, we never change. Mim Koymoi, it's space, we never change. Because the Makim is important, it's that Makim. And then he says, the Mikdash Neked Yitzur Ravini. And that place of the Mikdash, that's where that Kedah happened, the Yitzur. And he brings on a pasuk because it says Har Maria, and Divin Yom. And then he says Halacha Beis. That's Halacha Aleph. Halacha Beis. U'Mesoyis B'Yad HaKoil, it's a tradition by everyone. Everyone knows it's a tradition. Sha'amakim Shabbanim by David V'Shloim HaMizbeach B'Gornan. Hu Ha'amakim Shabbanim Avram HaMizbeach. At the place that David HaMelech, David and Shlomo were dedicated the place and built the Beis HaMikdash and built the Mizbeach in that particular place is exactly the place that Avram erected the Mizbeach, and that's the place where the Kedes Yitzchak. And they go back in history. It's the place that Noach built his own Mizbeach, Matzeva, Kishiyatzum Hateva. Who Mizbeach Shikav all of Kain Hevel. That's the place of Kain and Hevel. Uboy Hikav Adam Rishon Carbon Kishanivra, and that's the place that Adam Rishon brought a carbon when he was created. Umisham Nivra. And from that place, he was born. And then the Rambam adds, Chacham say, our sages say that Adam, he was born from the place of his atonement. Which is very strange. This whole Rambam is a little strange. First of all, what's Musayis B'Yad HaKol? Why does he break up these halachas? He's talking about Makom Mechuvim B'Yoser. The Makom is Mechuvim B'Yoser, and it's specific to that place. Let him say everything. That's a place of Yitzchak, and it's a place where Avram and Kain and Hevel haven't brought this back. Also, he ends and says, Boy Hikam Adam Rishon Carbon Shenivra, and that's the place that Adam Rishon brought a carbon when he was born. And then he says, Adam Makom Kaparas Nivra, Adam was created from the place of his atonement. What's in the gate that he was created in the place of the atonement? You're telling me where the Mizbeach is. So it's important to know this is the place that Adam Rishon brought the Mizbeach. Why is it important to know that Adam Makom Kaparas Nivra? Starts off the question is the pasuk says, Hashem, Shama Tiveu L'Seichem V'Zvichechem. This is what the pasuk says in the Divine Midberes. So the pasuk says that this is the place you have to bring the Mizbeach. This specific place you have to bring. So Makom HaSheyivcha. Makom HaSheyivcha means that it's not a miyuchadus. It's nothing specific about the place in its origin. But why is it there? Because that's what the Eibusha chose. And this is what we brought down before, a little too early maybe. The lashon of Chazal, the Mechilta, and the Tanchuma, Achel Nifchara. That there's a place Achel Nifchara. Regard specifically the Mizbeach. Chazal tell us in the Mechilta, Achel Nifchara Yerushalayim has a call Eretz Yisrael Ksher Mizbachos. That until Yerushalayim is not Nifchar, you can bring a carbon any place in Eretz Yisrael. And Misha Nifchara, and then when Yerushalayim is Nifchar, then it's awesome. Which means that the space itself, on its own, Achel Nifchar means that there's nothing inherent in the space. Achel Nifchar means it could have been this way, it could have been that way. Achel Nifchar. And then Hashem chose this space. But from the Rambam, it seems, Mekoyim Mechuvim B'Yoser. It's very specific to this place. And it's mashma that there's a cheshivas to this place. This is the place that Adam was born. This is the place that Kain Hevel brought the carbon. This is the place that Noach brought the carbon. And the truth is, there's a chroim, like the Masam Melech and the Chuzbes Abchir, that inherent quality. So he said, according to Sefer Achinuch, Mitzvah Talik Hey, the Makom Mizbeach is not in the schooling, it's not because of Bechir. The Bechir created the specialty of the place. But according to the Rambam, Makom Mechuvim B'Yoser, it seems to be saying that the place is inherent in this place. There's something about the place. That there's a quality even before Shenifchara. Even before that there was a pnei. There's a reason why it was HaKadosh Baruch was boichel, and then it was HaKadosh Baruch like it says, it's in the pasuk. The place Hashem is going to choose. Why that place? Because that's Hashem's choice. That's the way that becomes special, because Hashem chose to be special. Not that it's something inherent. But according to the way the Rambam is defining it, it's special already because this is the place that Adam Kaparasa live. This is the place that Kain and Hevel and Noach and Adam and Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all brought their kabbanis here. So Tzedek in Eretz Torah, Vayetze Kuf Ayin Ches Aleph, it's also Bira Azor, Vayetze Gimel, brings down a machlekes or a shoyim, another machlekes. Whether after the Bechira, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is already boicher in the place of Eretz Yisrael, boicher in Yerushalayim, boicher in the Har Maria, boicher in the place of Beis Hamikdash. If the place has, if the Hasharas HaShechina in this place creates a transformation in the place itself, does the place become Kiddushin itself? And he brings down the Rambam, the Shittas Rambam, and the Moirach, the Chelek Aleph, is that the Hasharas HaShechina is similar to the Seichel and the Yad. There could be two ways how we can think about it. It could be, let's say, a person has intelligence. The person's thinking, so consciousness. Where's the place of consciousness? Where does consciousness reside? It resides in the brain. But let's say you have an idea, and you're writing the idea, or typing the idea in a more modern parlance. So you're writing this idea, you're typing this idea. So there's seichel, there's intelligence, the way it's connected to the brain, which is actually creating wavelengths in the brain, that the brain is actually having indents or having expansion or elasticity. It's actually expanding through thought process, which means that the intelligence and the brain become misyachid, become unified in one reality, that over time the brain actually is imprinted by the effects of thought. However, the hand, which is writing thoughts, the hand that's writing thought is b'derech mavir. Thoughts are just passing through the hand. You can't say the hand is carrying intelligence. Now there's intelligence in the hand. It's a separate question. We're talking about the particular intelligence that you're thinking about. You're thinking a certain thought, and then you're writing with your hand. Could you say that in the hand is the thought? No. The thought is in the brain, and the brain is moving the hand through its nerve system, and it's allowing the hand to write down the thought that's happening in the brain. So there's two ways how we can think about it. One is b'derech hislapshus. One is that it becomes completely invested into this object, and one is b'derech mavir. It just passes over. It's just flowing through it, but not in it. Through it, but not in it. Was b'derech mavir, because Hasharas HaShechina is b'derech mavir, which means that it didn't permeate the object itself, the chefza itself. Now, upon this is the Shittas Rambam in the Moirach book. Upon this, the Rebbe asks, if we say this is what something is true, but it's not that the hand itself becomes a chefza shel kedusha. But here, so there's nothing in the siguli, there's nothing special in the place itself. But over here, it seems to me that the Rambam is saying that there is something siguli in the place. So how does the Rambam Shitta in the Moirach unify with the Rambam Shitta in the Rambam in Sefer Yad? And B'chal, in addition to this question, this is also the Shittas Rambam in general about Chefza Shel Kedusha is always about the Gavra and not about the Chefza. But here he seems to be saying that it's the Chefza itself, the object itself, and Eretz Yisrael is Mekoim Mechum B'Yosef. So the explanation that the Rebbe has on this Rambam is like this: that the reason the Rambam divides this into halachas is the truth is what the Rambam is saying. Why is Mechum B'Yosef? Why is it specifically in this place? Because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu was boicher in this place. This is what it says. And that's the place that Bana Avram and Bana Yitzchak, and Bana Noach and Adam, etc. and Kain v'Hevel. It's not that created the special quality of the space. It's the opposite. They knew intuitively or through prophecy or through tzivur, like Avram. Avram is clearly a Lech Lecha Maria. They intuited that there will be in the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be boicher in this place. So therefore, Noach and Kain and Hevel, etc., chose to make their korbanos in that place. So not that because it was chosen because of the skuli, it was chosen because it was used in that way. On the contrary, it was used that way because in the future it will be chosen. So that's why the Rambam has to add in the end, Amar Chacham Adam Makom Kapurasa Nivra. That's what the Rambam adds, Adam Makom Kapurasa Nivra. Why? Because he's saying like this. This is true, you can say, with Noach, with Avram, with Yitzchak, with Kain, Hevel, etc., that they had some type of prophecy. With Tzivur, they knew that this is a very special place in the future, because Hashem is going to be boicher in this place. So this is what they bought the korbanos. But he said that Adam, that's the place Adam mission, that Adam, the Mishal Nivra, Adam mission was created from that place. create Admonition in this place. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu does something, so there's Hashgacha, there's the idea of Hashgacha, that affects the place. So the fact that already HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam, right? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Baruch place. Why Hashem created Adam from that place? If Hashem created Adam from that place, that means that it has a special quality. By definition, by Hashem creating that place, from that place. So therefore the Rambam says, Adam Makim Kaparas Nivra. Adam was created. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu boicher in this particular place to create Adam Rishon? Because he knew that Adam Rishon would want to bring a carbon in a place where eventually Hashem will be boicher. So therefore Hashem created it in this place. So it wasn't that Hashem created this place, and therefore Adam Rishon created in this place because Adam Makim Kaparas Nivra, because that's the place that Adam Rishon is going to choose to use that space. Why is he going to choose to use that space? Because that's the place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be boicher in the future. So therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu was boicher him in this particular place. So this is the Shittas Rambam. That the Iker is, and this is what the Rambam calls this halacha, Sefer Bchira, a base of Bchira, right? The Hilchos base of Bchira, if the titles are given by the Rambam. And not Hilchos base of Dash, we assume that the titles were given by the Rambam, and the reason why it's called Hilchos Beis Bchira, not Hilchos Beis English, because it's the idea of the Bchira. It's not the idea of the Kedusha. It's the idea, therefore, if you look at the Rambam, you can see a little bit in the Lashon Rambam, this is also true this way. What does the Rambam say? HaMizbeach Mechuvim B'Yosef. Mizbeach Mechuvim B'Yosef, this place in Mizbeach, Mechuvim B'Yosef is very specific to this place. Then the Rambam writes, U'b'migdash Nekli Yitzchak Avinu, right? U'm'Mesoyes V'Yalakol is explaining what happened in these places. The Rambam doesn't say HaMizbeach Mechuvim B'Yosef, Mipnei, why is it Mechuvim B'Yosef? Because that's the place where Yitzchak was naked. It doesn't say Mosayis V'Yalakol Shamakim. Then Mechuvim B'Yosef. Why? Mipnei. It's the place Shabbat David Mishlam. It doesn't say because it's the place David Mishlam brought the Karbanis. It doesn't say it's the place because Avraham brought the Mizbeach, made a Mizbeach there, or because Noach made a Mizbeach there, or because Cain and Hevel made a Mizbeach there. It doesn't say Mipnei. It just says, and that is the place. This is a diak that we can understand from this shita, what the rabbis bring down in the Rambam. We can understand another diak in the Rambam. That he's not saying Mipnei, but he's saying V'hamakim. And then it becomes Kedusha. And Kedusha is Mipnei Ashchina, like the Rambam writes. Ashchina and Betela, and Ashchina. So the Pasuk says, Klal Yisrael. Am Kadosh L'Hashem L'kecha, U'B'cha Bachar Hashem. In Dvarim Zayin Vav. Says Rashi, Kedushas Atzimcha Ma'avisecha, V'Oid Bachar Hashem. It's not V'Oid Bachar Hashem. In other words, you could say that there's Bechira and there's Kedusha, and you could say that the idea of normally we think that first comes Bechira, and then comes the Kedusha. That would be the Shittas Rambam. What is the Shittas HaKuzari? The Shittas HaKuzari would be that there was Bechira in Klal Yisrael, and there was a Bechira in Makom Mizbeach. But the Bechira, Ubach, Ki Kadosh, Ki Am Kadosh L'Hashem L'Kecha, because you're Kadosh Ma'avisecha, you already have Kedusha Ma'avisecha. Kedusha Ma'avisecha V'Avraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov. You have the Inyan Eliki. And then in addition to that, V'Oid, in addition to that, Bachar Hashem. Kedushas Atzmacha Ma'avisecha means that there's already a Kedusha. V'Oid Bachar Hashem, and also in addition to that, Hashem was Boicher. So why? That's the same thing, that it's the same way it's true on the level of Nefesh. The same thing is also true on the level of Makim. That there's a Bechira. And the Bechira came because there was an inherent Kedusha. There's something about Eretz Yisrael already in the beginning of the Bria, that it was a Leiv Kol. There was a place in Atam Shabbat, and it was a place that there's complete Hashgacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then comes the level of Bechira. Why do we need a level of Bechira? Because Bechira comes is Dafka from Atzmas. That there's Kedusha is already a Gilui. Kedusha means that there's a particular type of Kedusha, an inherent quality that's revealed. It says a certain quality about something. It has positive qualities. It's positive, like the Baal Shem Tov teaches. And the Megillah. שהמלך אהב צדקה וככה, אז ככה כן. זה נקוד סיכס, חלק חפחס on 178. חלק בקדושה ובחיר, but קדושה means that it's a פנימי, and בחיר, מצד בחיר, there's a connection between the Bechira Klal Yisrael and Bechira Eretz Yisrael, and we have a connection on the level of Bechira, and then we have a deeper level connection, which is not a deeper, we have another level of connection, also on the level of Kedusha. So Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Kedusha. It's given to Am Kodesh. Kimavur, look at the Sichas Chelik Yitches for 2. So Mitzadik Kedusha. And then there's a higher level, Tzadik Kedusha is leading the Geluim, and then there's a higher level which is the Bechira, Matzmusei Kacha. You have to understand the Shitz HaKuzari, how the Shitz HaKuzari will be understood according to other Midrashim. There's other Midrashim which seem more aligned to the Shitz HaRambam. Like for Moshe, we said in the Chilta before, says, the Chilta says, is that Kol HaRatzis Ksheis of Dibros means Dibros is Nevuah. Kol HaRatzis Ksheis of Dibros means that before the Bechir in Eretz Yisrael, all the Haratzis were Shaykh to Nevuah. According to Shitz HaKuzari, that's not true. According to the Shitz HaKuzari, Dafka Eretz Yisrael had the mile of Nevuah connection because it's a middle climate, the Mitzrayim and the Nekudah. So how could we say Kol HaRatzis? Now you could say the Midrash is Chalukas, and the Kuzari will argue with say the different Medrash. But let's see if we can get this Medrash to be able to understand according to the Kuzari as well. Also, the Rambam brings down these different Midrashim that Adam in Makom Kaparasim, which is a Medrash Shabbat, Bereishis is also Yesham and Nazir Zayin Beis. But there's also a clear Medrash Pikad Blazer, American Beis. Medrash says, Chiba Yisera Chaber Baruch Hu Shebora min Mokim Torah v'Kodesh v'Koimosh Shal Beis Hamikdash. That the Chibur, so other more progressive will say you created, like we said before in the Rambam, say in the future. But over here, the Lashon of Medrash is Shebora min Mokim Torah v'Kodesh v'Mokim Beis Hamikdash. That he was creating the place of the Beis Hamikdash. A Mokim Torah v'Kodesh, and it had already Tahara, it had already purity and holiness already in the beginning of the Bria, beginning of the creation. That's very clear. The Shittas HaKuzari that Makom HaMikdash, Makom Eretz Yisrael, has a quality, and then Ubal. Then there's the Bechir. The Bechir was Sat Atzvus, but the first two was the Hat Kedusha, that had some inherent quality of Kedusha, like Klal Yisrael. So let's understand, if you can understand this Shittas HaKuzari of that it's Makom HaKodesh and then there's Bechira, let's understand if it could be massive with other Midrash Chazal. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Ches, says that Cholikas and Rameir says Adam Rishon Kol Offer, that Adam Rishon was created, his offer, the dust that he was created from Adama, the dust that he was created from is from all Hashem gathered, offered from the entire world. And then the Gemara said, Gufay, the Bavel, Rishon Eretz Yisrael, the Bar Mikol Haratzis, gathered from the entire world. Or the Lashon HaMedrash, the beginning of Bereshis, also Rishon Beis, it says, Kanish Afri Ma'arba Sitim De Alma, that Hashem gathered from all the Sitim De Alma, from all, I could say, like the Baruch and Hashem's creating, it says, Nasa, let us create. So the different Midrash Chazal, Rashi brings down Shem Malachim, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the angels, Nasa Adam. There's a period also Nasa Adam, that the Kodesh means that, others mean that. Nasa Adam means that the collective. Baruch Hu asked all of creation that man is created with everything. A little bit of beast, a little bit of lion, a little bit of tiger, a little bit of monkey, an elephant, and a little bit of trees, and a little bit of water, and forest. Hashem is, Adam is, the man is everything, a combination of everything. So the offer, the earth, of his body, the offer, the dust of his body, is Mikol Ein Ukol. So let's understand if we can understand these shittas, these medrashim, not shittas, these medrashim, according also to the Kuzari, which we say that he was created Dafka Meretz Yisrael and Makom Torah V'Kadosh, like the Russian of the Piccadilly was. So the Rambam talks about, there's a machlekes, the Gemara brings down in the Gillah, Yud, Gil Daf Yud, the Gemara talks about if kitchen Shayla, kitchen Shayla, kitchen Laslave, kitchen Shniak, kitchen Laslave, Batla, kitchen Shayla, Batla, or La Batla. The big argument in the Gemara talks about the machlekes of Tanoim, if the first Kedusha, when the Kedusha entered, when we entered Eretz Yisrael the first time, is kitchen Shayla, kitchen Laslave, the Kedusha was only for that generation, and then when we left Eretz Yisrael, with the first Chorban Ba'asishim, what left Eretz was Batla Kedusha, it was nullified, or what did it continue? Or there's a difference in Kedusha Shani and Kedusha Shani. First time and second time. So the Rambam says like this, that Makom HaMikdash is Pnei HaShechina, and therefore Shechina never leaves. Like we said before, different levels of the Shechina, like the Kuzari says Shechina in the Daris, but not the hot lower level of Shechina. Shechina is never leaving. That there's a difference between Kibush Rishon and Kibush Sheni. The first time Klal Yisrael went into Eretz Yisrael, and the second time Klal Yisrael went into Eretz Yisrael. The first time Klal Yisrael went into Eretz Yisrael, they entered Mitzad Chazak. Kibush level that Al-Chia is Mishis Ma'is Eidim the Kibush Arab. The Kibush level is with them, but Al-Kibush not her. The first one was their Kibush. The first time they entered Eretz Yisrael because they conquered. Therefore, when it was reconquered from them, with the Chorban Ba'asishim, it was Batla. The Shechina was Batla. The Kedusha was Batla. The Kibush Allah as a Kitcha. However, when Ezra came and was B'Kadosh Eretz Yisrael, like Kitcha the Kibush, Ela B'Chazak. He didn't do it through conquering, right? There was no conquering. He got permission actually from Cyrus, from the kings of Persia, Babylon, to go into Eretz Yisrael, and he went to Eretz Yisrael not because of Kibush, it wasn't the conqueror. He was taking his land, and he didn't do it without conquering. He got it through the permission of the authorities. So he did it because of Chazaka. Chazaka means he acquired it, and he made a Chazaka in the land. Shechzikabo, the figure of Kol Mak and Shechzikabo Elam Bavel, the scholars as a Shniya who moved the. So therefore, there's a difference between Kibush and Chazaka. The first time we went there to Eretz Yisrael because we went because of a Kibush, we conquered, and therefore Kitcha Shoyna Kitcha was like Kitcha Laslavi. Since we conquered, it was reconquered, the Kedusha left. However, with Chazaka, we went the second time we went to Ezra, we did not go through conquering. The historical truth of that event, we did not go through conquering. Acquired through Chazaka, and Ezra went into Eretz Yisrael is still acquired today. So the Kesef Mishnah asks a very simple question. A, what's the difference of Chazaka and a Kibush? And conquering. Say that. The first one because of the Kibush, because he conquered. Therefore, it was reconquered, the Kedusha left. The second was because of Chazaka. You could say the same thing. The Chazaka that we made in Eretz Yisrael the second time, and then Klal Yisrael left. After Chorban Ba'asishim, you could say now the Chazaka was bottled, and then a new Chazaka of the conquering armies made a new Chazaka. That's number one. Second question is, the first one definitely was because of Kibush. They conquered, like we read in the story of Yeshua. They conquered Yichud, they conquered Ai, they conquered the lands, city after city, and they conquered Eretz Yisrael. But once they did a Kibush, they also did a Chazaka. They also acquired it. They also, however you make a chazaka with karka, not all the parts. If you walk the line, if you make a gate, how you make a chazaka on earth. In karka, they made a chazaka, of course, they lived there. So why, in the first time when they entered into Eretz Yisrael, they entered with a kibush and a chazaka, in his language, me a different chazaka, but like kibush, the kedusha shliim, the chazaka im kibush. How could it be that the second one, they only made a chazaka, is better than the first one, they made a kibush and a chazaka? This is the problem, what the Kesef Mishnah has in the Rambam. So there's, again, in Chedush Burim, it's Sin Yud Ches. The Rebbe will divide this Rambam like this. There's two things in Eretz Yisrael. There's the Bailos of Eretz Yisrael, and there's the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Bailus is the ownership of Eretz Yisrael, and then there's the Kedusha, which is the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. They're two separate things. Bailus Eretz Yisrael was already given to Avram Avinu. L'zaracha Nasati, so the Yerushalmi learns, Chalak Erev Beis, Yerushalmi learns that Nasati means Nasati Kvar. I gave it already. Because Baruch Hu said L'zaracha Nasati means Avram Avinu already had Bailus Eretz Yisrael. That's why it says Ger v'Toisha v'Imach. That could be because of the Toisha element. So he holds the has the Bailus Eretz Yisrael. Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. This Bchiras Eretz Yisrael, but Kedushas Eretz Yisrael was not created only when Klal Yisrael went into Eretz Yisrael. And how are they created? How do we create Kedusha? Kedusha comes from a mitzvah. That when the Eibush is a mitzvah, the mitzvah Hashem sanctifies us with the mitzvah. So there was a tzivur. There was a tzivur. What was the tzivur? Says in Parshas Mati, Islam Beis Chavtes. V'nichvash Eretz Yisrael lefneichem. You koivash Eretz Yisrael. You do it through conquering. That was the tzivur. The tzivur, which gave us the koyach for kedusha to inherit the land and create kedusha Eretz Yisrael, to draw down kedusha Eretz Yisrael, was through the tzivur. What was the tzivur? Nichvash. The tzivur was through kvisha. However, the second time we entered Eretz Yisrael, which b'ashgacha pratis, there was no kibbush. And we knew that the Churban will only last, Golus only lasted 70 years, and Alpin, Hanavim, Chagas Chaim Malachim, and Ezra Sofer, we went to Eretz Yisrael, so we understood that how do we have to enter Eretz Yisrael? What's the divine mandate? How we enter Eretz Yisrael now is through Chazaka. So now the tzivur is through Chazaka. If the tzivur is Chazaka, this is what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam is saying, not they did a kibbush and they also had a Chazaka, like the Shal of the Kesser Lishri. Yes, of course they did a kibbush and they did Chazaka. And they did other things as well. That's not the issue. The issue is how did they get the land? How did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Klal Yisrael they should acquire it to make the Kedushas Eretz Yisrael was through Kibbush. So therefore, if you conquer it, someone else can conquer it back. That's the nature of conquering. Conquering means that by definition it doesn't belong to me and doesn't belong to you. I conquer it from you, now it belongs to me. You conquer it back from me, it belongs to you. Chazaka means that I acquire it, becomes mine. So in the first time we went to Eretz Yisrael, we went because of Kibbush, therefore, Kibbush Rishon only Kitchen Lassi love it. However, Kibbush Shliya went to Eretz Yisrael because of Chazaka, therefore required, and it lasts. Kitchen Shliya is Kitchen also for now. And there brings down the Rakachava. But the Rakachava explains, the Rakachava explains that Avram, the Lashon of to acquire to Yisrael is Chak is Acha Eting. It's a process of Nesina, of Matana. Hashem will give it to us, like a Matana, a gift. But also as Yisrael, there's a Lashon, the sense about Eretz Azois Rishta. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram Avinu that you're going to be Yerush Eretz Yisrael. Yerush Eretz Yisrael means that it's a Bechina of Yerusha. And the entire Eretz Yisrael is a gather of one Nekuda. You can't have one part of Eretz Yisrael. It's not Mischala. It's not. Then but if it's a quality issue, either you have it or you don't. So he says, Mitzad, the idea of matana, of a gift, Eretz Yisrael is one Nekuda. Built in a spirit, it doesn't divide itself. However, on the level of Yerusha, it could be a little bit. You have a little bit more, you have a little bit more. So this is the difference between Kibbushish and Kibbushay. That Mitzad, on the side of the giver, so there's giving, a gift, and there's inheriting. The difference between gift and inheritance is also the difference between the Noisim and the Makabel, between the giver and the receiver. On the level of Matana, it's about Nasan, you're giving. It shouldn't be about you giving, it's about the giver. And The makabel, the receiver of this gift, doesn't have a tefillah, cannot argue, please give me that gift, I need a gift from you. Gift means I choose to give you a gift. It's because of me, because of the giver. The idea of Yerusha is specifically the opposite direction. Because Yerusha, what does Yerusha mean? Yerusha means that the makabel, the receiver that inherits this, is the child of the person that passed away, or inherited this gift, this thing to him. Which means that it's about the receiver. So gift is about the giver, and inheritance is about the receiver. Therefore, when it's a gift, that would be kibbutz Eretz Yisrael on the first level, the first time we enter Eretz Yisrael. The makabel doesn't change. There's no transformation in the makabel itself. Nothing changes. You're just gifted something. For example, we can give another analogy of this. There's this idea of namadik sufa, shameful bread. When you're gifted something and you don't work and earn it and desire it, so a lot of times you squander it, you lose it, because you didn't own what was gifted to you, and therefore, in the kedusha Rishayna, which was good, on the second level, which is the idea of Yerusha. Yerusha means that it's inherited. Inherited means that you're a child of the person that gives you this thing. So in other words, there is some type of relationship of why you're receiving it. It's not just gifted to you for no reason, or at least from when you're born or mature enough to have consciousness to know who your parents are, or who this person that's going to inherit you this gift, this money. So there's something about the transformation of the makabel himself. Someone that inherits is in a much more transformed state than someone that just receives something as a gift. It's the difference between a malshuva and a tzaddik. Like the other explains over there. Okay, that's basically the structure of this idea. So in Eretz Yisrael, when it was received as Yerusha in the second level, the second time, before the second time it was received, it became an inherit of Klal Yisrael. So we see that the Bechir in Eretz Yisrael, there's Bechir because of the giver, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore in the place of the Noisim, of the giver, of the Matana, of the giver, it's to all of Eretz Yisrael, and to all of Klal Yisrael. And then there's the level of Yerusha, which is B'Yischalkus of Eretz Yisrael. So this difference between the two levels of Kedusha, which is the difference in saying that one is the Kedusha that's from the level of the giver, and one is from the level of the receiver. On a more darkest level, on a more refined level, is also the difference, even more so, even the difference between Kedusha and Bechira itself. That Bechira comes because of the Noisim, and Kedusha is because of the Makabel. At least the Makabel is revealing it. That Bechira is the Koyach HaAtzmi. So Bechir, where's the Bechir in Klal Yisrael, for example, in the world of Nefesh? The Bechir of Klal Yisrael is specifically in the body. The body doesn't have Gilui. Like Alter Rebbe writes, one of a heart is in the body, in the guf, kufim the condition. But Kedusha is when there's a Gilui. Gilui is already in the Makabel. So even though Yerusha Lefi Erech Matana is noise and one is the makabel, but even matana, which is a gift, which represents the noisim, even matana, the Gemara says, "Ilov the adal naicha l'nafshi layav lamatanta." The Gemara says, "Kitmin that even though matana, the gift is I decide to give to you, and it's not about you, it's because I decide. When a person only gives something to somebody, if the other person does something to them, there has to be something in the makabel. A person does something nice to the other person, therefore a person desires to give them a gift. So therefore, even matana, which is the kedusha, the level of kedusha, there's still some level of the self-involvement. So even the level of matana, which we said is the idea of kibush rishon, where there's no transformation, and therefore it's bottle, and it's almost on the nice, and it's almost on the giver. Lefi erech bechira, even matana is the makabel, because ilo yang leichem lenavel matana. So now let's go a little further. What did the Rakachava say? Rakachava says that because of the Noisim, on the level of the Noisim, Eretz Yisrael is built of Ishalik. It's all of Eretz Yisrael, and it's built of Ishalik. On the level of Makabel, which we understand now, level of Makabel is the idea of Kedusha. Both Kedusha Rishona and Kedusha Shniya. Kedusha Rishona, the Fi'erech Kedusha Shniya, is the Noisim, the Fi'erech Makabel. But both Kedusha Rishona and Kedusha Shniya, Lefi Erech, the idea of Bechira, is the Makabel. So where do we have the real Noisim of giving purely in a place of giving, not even because of Mitzan Matana, where Hashem, where do we see that? Because that's in the Bechira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bechira in Eretz Yisrael comes only Mitzan HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachar. The Bechir comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So because of the Bechir and the level of the Noisin is Eretz Yisrael Hashlema in the Nekuda in one point. Therefore, who was it given to? It was given to Goyach HaBaretz. Given to Klal Yisrael. Because Klal Yisrael represents that Nekudas of real. So the Nekudas HaNoisin of the Boicher of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Eretz Yisrael, which is purely because of the Noisim. The Noisim, the level of Eretz Yisrael, is built in the Schalik. It doesn't divide itself. It's only Mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mitzad HaSmusis Baruch. Hashem shows Eretz, shows the gift to Klal Yisrael. So the Kiddush is the level of the Giluyim, of Torah and Mitzvahs, and the level of the Inyan Laki that we already inherit from Ram Yitzhak Yaakov. And in parallel to that, in the idea of Eretz Yisrael, the Eretz Yisrael, and the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, Hanachas Hashem, and Eretz Chaim is connected with the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. But that's Mitzad, the Mekabel, the receiver, or the Ispashtus, or the Giluyim, the revealing of the quality of Eretz Yisrael. And then Eretz Yisrael has a higher thing, a higher level of Bach Bachar, the higher level of Sadas Musis Baruch, the Eibush shows Eretz Yisrael. Taka after the Kedusha, so to speak, like the pasuk said, then Bachar. The Kedusha is Ma'avei Secha, and then there's the Bachar, like in Klal Yisrael. Same way, Yisrael is in the Kudus of Bria, and then there was a Bechir. But the Bechir is in the Atzmus of Eretz Yisrael, in the Nekuda of Eretz Yisrael. And it's the Nekuda that is built in the Schalik, because the Schalkus comes because of the Mekablim, because of the receivers. And this is because of the Noisin. The Noisin, there's no level of the Schalkus. So because Mitzad HaNoisin, because of the giver, Mitzad the Boicher, there's only Achas Apshuta, and it's built in Misalik. So we could say a little bit deeper even, that this Nekuda of the Achdus that exists is the Nekuda of Achdus that exists within all the world, in the entire world. The Eretz Yisrael is the Nekuda Pnimis of the entire world. So let's start off with the Gemara. There's two Gemaras. It's the same sugi as the Gemara in Yuma, the end of Yuma, in the Pez, which talks about the idea of Pikuach Nefesh. And then there's also the Gemara in Saita, the Mishnah in Saita, the Gemara talks about this. The question is, where is a person's, God forbid, in the case of Larufa, has to do with a person who, God forbid, is found, and corpse is found where the body is severed from the body, so you move the head to the body to the head. The Gemara in Yuma talks about the question of Pikuach Nefesh, it's the Shabbos. So the question is, if you find someone, you're not sure he's alive, you check his breath, you check his tab or his lev. Then the Gemara brings in the conversation also of Vlad Mehechem Noitzer. From where is a person created from? And the Gemara brings down the Chachamim, that brings down that the idea of a person is created, Mehechem Vlad Noitzer, from where a person is created. So the more brings down the person is created from mitabure, from his taber, from his, and first it's the shit of Abishal, and then the more just like you find this idea in Nefesh, which I'll understand this a little bit more deeper, just like you find this idea in Nefesh, in the world of souls, that the question of from where a person is created, from his middle or from his top, so to speak, is also the same thing the Gemara asks. A question Gemara talks about from place. So where does space come from? Where's the Bria Sa'olam? So the Gemara in Yom Dal brings down that it's called Eretz Shasiya. It's a place of the world, Makam HaMikdash, Ham-Makam, the space, Makam Mizbeh, Olam, Mitziyusa Nivra. Elazar holds that the world is created from its center point, from the middle. Shloimer, Olam Minat Stadim Nivra. The Olam was created from its sides. In the human form, that would be like parallel to the head. It would be like the side versus the middle. And Chacham say no, that the world is created in Mitzian Nivra. So we can say Chacham is not really an argument for Elazar or an argument with Bishua, maybe just explaining this opinion of Bishua and Elazar. This is with regards to the question of space, of Makkah. This is also a question with regards to Zman, time. So the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah Aleph, the Mishnah says, Rav Elazar says, and brings a brisa, that petition Ibrahim, that the world was created in the 7th month. Everyone agrees that Chodesh Harishon, the months of the year, is Nisan. That's what the Torah tells us. That the Chodesh Harishon is the first month of the year, and Chodesh Hashvi, the 7th month of the year, is Tishrei. But when was the world created in time? So Rav Elazar holds that the world is created in time on the 7th month, which is the middle. It's 12 months a year, it's the middle point. Rabbi Yeshua says, Benifzah Nivra. Rabbi Yeshua says, Benissa. This argument in Zman is the exact same argument in Rav Elazar and Yeshua in Makim, in space, where Rav Elazar holds that Makim is Olam Mitzvah Nivra, the world is created from its midpoint, and Yeshua holds it was Mitzvah on the side. We paskin la halacha, which is when we have Rosh Hashanah, one Rosh Hashanah hand, and for that Rosh Hashanah we paskin for Elazar. We hold that Rosh Hashanah is Tisha Nivra. So Gemara and Yuma and Soitis brings down the question is that the point that Iker Chayas of a person is Ba'apov, Kolash Ruach, Chayim Ba'apov, is Ba'apov. Everyone agrees, it seems. So that's the question of where the Iker Chayas of a person is. But Mehechan Avlav Noitzar, everyone agree that Kom Midi B'Mtzusim everything is created, is formed from its middle point. That the Gemara brings down Yuma, Pehe, and Soitim of the Kuzari from his middle, from his belly button. The Kiva says L'choitmai. That's not a machloikis mehechem nitzar. That's not a machloikis of where he's created from. That's a machloikis of where is his chayas from. Where's his chayas as he's alive? I mean, in other words, they all agree that the person, that everything everything is created from its midpoint. Both Rav Elazar and Yeshua agree with that. When they said V'hechem Moedim, they're asking where is it a person's ikar chayas. So Rav Elazar holds mitibure. He holds from his middle point. And again, Rav Elazar holds Tishrei. Tishrei Nivra Olam. And he holds that the world was created from its midpoint. And Rabbi Kiva holds that so the argument is, like the Pirsha Mishnayos that Rambam writes, it's really an argument whether, what's the ikar chayes of a person? What's the ikar of a person's livelihood? Does it come from food? So therefore, Tibur is replacing his beten, replacing his stomach. Emtza beten, like the Rambam writes. Or Rabbi Kiva says that Iker comes from, the main thing comes from breath, from ear. So therefore, it's Avir or Muslim. That's really Machlokes, Avir or Muslim. But they all agree, both Rabbi Lezer and Rishu agree, both Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Kiva agree that Kol Midim and Susim Siyatsu. And the truth is, this is very clearly in Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi and Soik in the same sugar pair test. Yerushalmi writes this. Rabbi Lezer Omer Tiburi Mimokim Shavlad Noitzer. Rabbi Lezer holds Mimokim Shavlad Noitzer. It's the place where man is created. It's the Shittas of Lezer. Rabbi Kiva is not that he's arguing with Mokim of Lad. So what does Rabbi Kiva say? Rabbi Kiva Omer Mechoit Mokim Hakaras Ponim. It's the place that's Hakaras Ponim. So Rabbi Kiva that says Mechoit Moi is not because he says that Yitzirasoi is Mechoit Moi. Rabbi Kiva agrees with Rabbi Lezer, Mitibura is Mokim Shvisa Nivra. That's the Mavlad Nivra. That's Rabbi Kiva agrees to Rabbi Lezer. That weird is a thing created from its middle point. And they both hold like Abba Shol. The argument is now that he's already a living being, creature. Where does his highest now come from? From his stomach or from his breath? So let's go now to Eretz Yisrael. We said that Eretz Yisrael, that Shittas of Lezer, which we're going to say is now going to be the Shitta of most Tanoim. There's a Shitta of Abba Shol, that everything is created from its midpoint. In Zman, in Mokim, in Zman and Mokim, and in Nefesh. Okay, that's Machlokes, but in the Yitzira of Mokim, they would all agree with Abba Shol. Besides Chacham, they argue Abba Shol, but they all agree with Abba Shol. Now, Kol Midei, everything that was created is created from its midpoint. So Eretz Yisrael is, like the Kuzari explains, is the Emtza Olam. Is the midpoint of the world, the center of the world, and the Kudas of Amakim. And from there, everything expands. So when Eretz Yisrael, the Tabor Aretz, when it calls the world the Tabor Aretz, the Tabor, just incidentally, the Tabor, which is the belly button, the midpoint of the body, the Tabor and the Lev are actually interchangeable. So we can use it because if you look at the Gemara when it says and Yeshem ad liboy, some opinions say ad liboy, from his heart. The Gemara is talking about it. God forbid if you see a pile of stones falling at someone on Shabbos, where should you check if the person's still alive? So the Girsas Rashi is ad liboy, and the Girsa of the Rif, or the Hanano, and the Rosh is ad tiburei. So Tibura and Liboy could be interchanged. So we're saying that Eretz Yisrael is the midpoint, is the center of creation. And that's going to be the Shittas HaKuzari Lahalacha when it comes to the Kavatayach, which is a big conversation in general, if Lahalacha, if there's an idea of Kavatayach B'chlal. Frank and Meltzer, Kasha, they hold that it's not really relevant to Kavatayach, it's really where you are. And then there was a Shitta of some Rishonim which bring down the Kavatayach Eretz Yisrael as like the end point, so you go 180 degrees before. And the Shittas HaKuzari, which eventually becomes also the Shittas Chazon Ish, after he was asked with the Bacher after in Japan, in Shanghai, right after the war, what did you do for Yom Kippur, which they should keep. So the Shitta was Eretz Yisrael is the midpoint of the world, so 90 degrees prior, somewhere in the middle of China, is where the international daytime is. This is the idea of the Lev, that also halakha, that it actually has halakhic implications, has practical implications, that it represents the nekuda of everything. Now, let's understand a little bit this machlokes, this argument between if the world is created from the beginning or from the middle, if space is created from the beginning and the middle, if man was created from his head, from his middle. And we'll say, what's the nekuda of this conversation? And what's the nekuda of the conversation when we talk about space? Whether it's on the side or not. So the Maharal in Be'er Goyla, Be'er Shishi, in most places, page Kufam and Aleph, And it says that when it explains that the idea of Eretz Yisrael is in the middle, what does it mean that it's in the middle? That the middle represents a place that's shava. The middle represents a place that's even. Sides represents a place that's differences, mishtanim. If we say that the east is different than the west, or the south is different than the north, which means that everything is contrast to everything else. So there's something that it has versus something that it doesn't have. And because it's something it has and something that it doesn't have, it's susceptible to heder. It's susceptible to eventually not having everything. If something has something and it doesn't have something else, if it's an inherent chesed, inherent something that's lacking, has the quality of lack within its quality, eventually you can lack everything, which means it can become complete heder, complete emptiness and nothingness. By definition, something that's whole and only has wholeness, doesn't have the opposite of wholeness, is something that exists eternally. So the Maharal explains this in terms of Eretz Yisrael. When we say that Eretz Yisrael is connected to the middle, that it's the Emtsoi, and it's called the Eretz HaChaim, the place of life, which means the place of eternity, of immortality, the place of infinity. Because it's not connected to Ketzavis. The Ketzavis, the edges, is a place where there's susceptibility to Chesed, because it's this and not that. And because in contrast, something that's a center point includes everything. And therefore, because it includes everything, it never lacks anything. And that's the idea of the center point. Something the Maharal explains a little bit different on the Gemara in Sanhedrin. In Chadish Agadas, he explains this in his commentary in Chavdallah and Aleph. The Gemara says, that are pleasant to each other in halacha. It says, the aver, the atmosphere, the climate of Eretz Yisrael is a perfect middle balanced climate, which means that the nekuda is built in mishtana. The nekuda, the point in the middle, represents a place of emtsoi. That's the place that's built in mishtana and built in mispared, and it doesn't ever break apart. Remember, we talked about the idea of bchira, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was boich in Eretz Yisrael. That idea of bchira in Eretz Yisrael, that bchira is because of the noisim. The difference in noisim and kabbalah would be, like the Chavah explained, the difference in noisim and kabbalah would be that mitzad noisim, and the place for the giver is only the yichud. Eretz Yisrael is built in mischalik. Mitzad and kabbalah, it's mischalik. Now that can be the difference in kiddush and kiddush sheni, but a little bit deeper, that's the difference in bchira and kiddush. That's why there can be even a machlokes in Gemara if Kitcha Shniya is also in this bathroom or not. It's possible that it's not. It's not, but it's possible that it would be because it's supposed to be in the Makabel, even though over there it's Mitzad Yerusha. So the idea is that when there's the Koyach HaBoyer, the Koyach HaBoicher, which is the Noisim, Mitzad that Madrega, Eretz Yisrael is built in Mischalik, and since it's built in Mischalik, it's the Emtsoi of creation, of the Bria. And because in Bria, it's Eretz Yisrael and the Kuda Achas. It's one point, and on a deeper level, what's the difference between something that's the side or the middle? When you say something is a side, it's never rosh, not stadim. It means that it starts here, and then it moves, and it gets further away. The head is not the feet. The head is not the heart. The head is not a person's feet. The head is not the arms. If it comes to minat stadim, the further it gets from the stad, the further it gets, let's say this is the one side of the spectrum to the right, and then the further it's moving to the left, the further it's moving away from the right side. But when it comes to the idea of the nekuda actually exists within every single prat. What's the nekuda? What does the nekuda represent? The nekuda represents the point. The point is not the beginning. The point is the middle. The middle point, every single thing has the middle point. The middle of every single thing, the point of that thing. So is that it's the nekuda b'soich chol hapratim. And a little bit deeper. So it's explained. It was Yom Echad, not Yom Rishon. Yom Echad because everything was b'sachad. Everything was they created. Day one was created. And everything was Eretz Yisrael. Even the nekuda achas. Just like Koyim Machet. There was no other than Bliyah. There was only Nishmas Yisrael. Koyim Machet. But what happens in the Chet Tzadas, and Chet Tzadas occurs on the level of Nefesh, and it occurs on a level of Shana, of time, which is the Kitu Galawana. So that already happened on a different level. The Miyat Alavana, which is, and then it occurs in Makim, which is the Tzimtzum, the original Tzimtzum. So it occurs in Olam Shana Nefesh. That because of Chet Tzadas, what happens with Chet Tzadas is the Yikach Mipiriya, that other Mauritian took mid-period. Mid-period, the Zohar Kodesh writes, that was the Chet. He took he took from something, he took from the everything. He was mefared a something from the everything. You can eat from everything. Other Maimer Chazal says, so the deeper level means, that every Mikol Olam Kula, the Zohar Kodesh writes, that he took from every place of offer, which means from the Nekuda of the Ach Shadriya. So it's not a steer, it's not a contradiction of these two Midrashim. Because when it says he took from all the world, that means that he took from Eretz, the Eretz Yisrael of every single place. The Nekuda of every single place, which at that point in the Yom Aleph of the Riyah, the Koyde Machet, everything was only the Nekuda. Me'enze is Acher Achet, is Acher Matan Torah. It says, B'chol Magam Sh'asker Shmi Shonu Lacher V'ticha, and Mizvah Chazal Matasali, any place, anytime you're Masker Shmi. And really, it's a convoluted pasuk, Kaviyachol. And it's not B'chol Magam Sh'asker Shmi Ava Lacher V'ticha. Not any place that you mention my name, I will come and bless you. But Chazal, he learns it, that B'chol Magam Asher, that's the place where you're allowed to say my name. The Gemara talks about if you have to say the Gvulin in Eretz Yisrael, or the Gvul, what's the name you say Hashem, Adonai Yishem, you give okay. So that's the Mikra Masuris is Dafka Yashloimer is also Mitzad the Chet. That the fruit and the bark and the branches itself tasted the same thing. Why? Because there was no chiluk between the means and the end. There was no chiluk between the one and the man. That caused the pure, that caused the separation. That caused the higher level of quality of the human being, the moral, godly being of the person, the death of the body, and the unliveliness of the body. The body has to return to its elements. But even within the Adama limitation and separation within his own consciousness. And now, in the lev, the idea of concealment. Then Kadosh Baruch Hu gave Bailas Eretz Yisrael, which is again that's connected. The general is connected to the cloud, and the Prat, the point, the center point of creation. The Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Echad gave the clouds to Goy Echad Ba'aretz, that Nekuda, built the Mischalak, was given over to all of Klal Yisrael, the Netzach. Dafke Klal Yisrael as they stand as a Nekudas Achas, a Nekuda Achas. So the Gemara says, the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Gimel says that the Din Arvus, laws of Arvus, only happened after Klal Yisrael was Eber Yarden, after Klal Yisrael crossed the Yarden and entered Eretz Yisrael. And so Vur, Chelech Havav, Mishpat Malov, the Chavar explains that Safra Shanech, and then on the Gemara Al Basar and Sanhedrin, because the Din Arvus is Yachid. Loi beget a Nifrod, Lachay Mane Arvus. That the whole idea of Arvus comes, what is the idea of Arvus? That the person is responsible for another person. The responsibility occurs because Klal Yisrael becomes a Metzias Achas. When did they become a Metzias Achas? When they crossed Eretz Yisrael. When they entered Eretz Yisrael, which is the Metzias, the Nekuda Achas of Olam, they were able to misachad on the level of Nefesh. That's the Ezer, like the Kuzari says. That the Tachlis is the Ummah, is the people's Nefesh. But how does this Nefesh become revealed? How does this Nefesh become revealed? ואחר יש לאורץ בזה איזה. The Gemara says if you can say Chamarazim in Bavel or Dafn Eretz Yisrael, if there's a lot of people, so the Rosh Hashanah explains because they're like it's here. Bavel is a place of Bavel, is Tishtush, Machshach Meshivane, the Tam Bavel, it's Bilbul. It comes from a place of Bilbul, which is the opposite of Yichud, the place of sex. So in that place, therefore, in Taina Sibur Bavel, there's no Taina Sibur, the Gemara says. So in Bavel, there's no place of Yichud. There's only place of period. Only in Eretz Yisrael, because Eretz Yisrael is the Nekuda. It's the Nekuda Achtas Apnimi, because it's Achtas Apnimi, therefore it brings out the Achtas in Klal Yisrael. And this is also the halacha. The Rambam writes in the Cheshkagas, the Gimel Beis. Ein mashgichim al yoshvei chutz la'aretz she'ein koreh kol entire Yisrael as a Kal Yisrael only occurs in Eretz Yisrael like the Rambam. Ein l'shgiach b'yetz. Now, there's a famous Maimer Chazal. Maimer Chazal, it's quoted in many stories. Is a Siddur Eretz Yisrael should smash b'chol ha'aratzos. But a Siddur Eretz Yisrael, the Nekuda Eretz Yisrael, the Mispash Eretz Chol ha'aratzos. That just like the Chilo said, the Asilave through the Geula, in time of the Geula, this is in Gol and Geula, Golus, Gala, which is Golus, and the Aleph and the Hay, which we explained earlier, the difference in Aleph and Hay from the Maram. Whether you reveal the Aleph and the Pratim, or you go from the Pratim to the Klal, that idea of Golus is what's the Nikud of Golus, what's the point of Golus? Is learning Yisrael Ella. There was a point of Klal Yisrael to go into Golus, the Habris on game, to collect the pieces, the parts, the particles, the individuations, the Pratim, and bring the Pratim back into the Klal. So in the Tchilas Abriya, there was only the Nikud. In the Maimer Aleph, in Bereshit Bara, where everything was created in the first day of creation, the first moment of creation, the first day, that's a level of Yachid. It's a singularity. It's built in the spire. It's a Yichud. It's built in the spire. It's a world of Yichud that's built in the spire. It doesn't have Pratim. That's in one moment, one Nekuda. But also love to be a deeper, because the Kavanas of Bria is that there's a tachlis of this whole galus. The tachlis of galus is that a yid should take all the pratim and Ivraim, all the pratim, all the space and consciousness, all the places that's found in the Olam period, and in that world of period to Megala, to reveal the Farukta places and the side places, to reveal in that place that all of Yerushalayim will be the Beis HaMikdash. And all the provides that any place I'm standing in is the Koim HaMikdash Gufa, Shalas Love. Any time place I'm standing in this about the Knesses, about the Midrashim. Shabbat I'm standing in the Beis HaMikdash of the future. About the Midrash, but Knesses means something that's gathered. In all the dissension, all the pratim, and all the golas, find Tzion. Tzion Mishmut Padat, whoever writes, what's the idea of Tzion? Tzion is the essence on the Shabbat, the Rishon of the Kus that a person has. That a person has to reveal the Tzion, the inner Tzion. And this is what Chassidus comes to reveal, is that the tachlis of the golas is to find the achtus that exists within the Bria. Because there's a Chassidus word that it's brought down in many svarim. An example. And then you can't say that the simple pshat is because it's more difficult to mechavan to Yerushalayim. It's easier to just have intention towards the area of mechavan within Eretz Yisrael Yerushalayim, within Yerushalayim Beis HaMikdash. Maybe that mechutz la'aretz you can only mechavan this. It's possible to do. It's much easier. So why does it say that mechutz la'aretz you can only mechavan to Eretz Yisrael? And he explains in Avodah, saying that it's talking about aliyah. The person is l'salam malas hamizbechi. You can't jump level spiritually. You have to go slowly. If you're mechutz la'aretz and your mind is still in a place of exile, a place of machshavas zaros, and your place of mind is filled with shtus and ravolim, and try to daven, and try to empty the mind, and clear the mind, to have the vekas, that connection. So he says the first thing is this mechavan, just to be mechavan according to Eretz Yisrael, just try clarity on that level. That's the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. That's the first level. Then when you get to the place of Eretz Yisrael, you mechavan the higher level in Yerushalayim and the higher level in the Beis HaMikdash. And he brings down a person to mechavan takin tefillah, that is standing in the Beis HaMikdash. So this is what it means. This is why it says that it's not chas v'shalom. It's when a person is in a state of chutz la'aretz, in the chutz la'aretz represents a place of lack of clarity and filled with nonsense and worries and daigas and culminating other things that are troubling the person, not allowing the person to grow and to be connected. And this is the way to try to mach Eretz Yisrael, first to make here Eretz Yisrael, to macham to Eretz Yisrael, to macham to this nekuda, bring out this nekuda, and slowly from there to build up to this place. And this is the chiddush of the Asalov. Say the chiddush of the Asalov, I see that Yisrael Shvas V'chal HaRatzos. So it doesn't say Chas Shalom that Asida Kol HaRatzos Shi Eretz Yisrael. It says Asida Kol HaRatzos Shvashat. Asida Kol HaRatzos means that there's still Eretz Yisrael, there's still the nekuda. And that nekuda is mispash fills the entirety. But there's still the makom, there's still mekomer. There's still mekomer prati. It's still makom basic. It's still the makom of the basic English. Basic English is going to mean the entire Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim will be all of Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael will be mispash the Chol HaRatzos. This is the sense of koydem everything in the minor echad and from the one singularity of the Baruch. That's it. The tachlis of the whole idea